on our mobile app. You just need to look up SABC Plus, that's SABC Plus, and look for Channel Africa.
We're going to get into what we're covering in the show in just a bit, and let's get our news first. Here's Jwalane Tulongwepe with our news update, and then sports headlines after her with Fikile Lingwati.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Leading human rights organizations have renewed calls for investigations into the killing of protesters by Kenya's security forces during demonstrations against a rise in taxes last June. This follows a BBC Africa Eye investigation exposing members of the security forces who shot dead 3 protesters at Kenya's parliament, igniting public outrage and demands for justice. Amnesty International and the Kenya Human Rights Commission said the officers identified in the documentary should face the law. The wider clampdown by the security forces on a series of protests against the finance bill left at least 65 people dead. The government of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo have agreed to come up with a draft peace deal by May 2nd in the conflict that has wrecked the east of the DRC for more than 3 years. The ministers of foreign affairs of both countries signed the declaration in the United States. Chris Okamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The DRC and Rwanda have committed to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. They also agreed to stop providing military support to non-state armed groups. The two countries also committed to facilitate the repatriation of Congolese refugees who fled to neighboring countries. They are expected to come up with a draft of the implementation of the peace agreement by May 2nd. Qatar and the US are mediating talks between the DRC and Rwanda to end the war and facilitate trade deals in the lucrative mining sector for their private firms.
Despite improvements in the Central African Republic, most of the population remains vulnerable to violence, disasters and health emergencies. This is according to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. The country has faced years of instability. OCHA reports that in this year, 38% of the population is so vulnerable that humanitarian aid alone will not be sufficient to ensure their well-being. Deputy Head of Office for OCHA in the Central African Republic, Tobias Schultz, explains.
Really, we need to work 2 different elements at the same time. One, from our side, mobilize the humanitarian resources to respond for those people who are still exposed to shocks, while at the same time also engaging with countries to mobilize not only humanitarian resources, but also engage with the government to strengthen their capacity to deliver basic services. So really what we would like to see here in the Central African Republic, as we hopefully continue to slowly and progressively phase out, to see development actors stepping in and the Central African Republican government to play a much more predominant role in this evolving context.
Road fatalities in South Africa over the Easter weekend reduced drastically this year by almost 50% as compared to the same period in 2024. This was announced by Transport Minister Barbara Creecy during a media briefing in Pretoria. The highest number of fatalities were recorded in the Eastern Cape with 28 deaths, followed by the KwaZulu-Natal province with 27 fatalities. Minister Creecy explains.
Fatalities were reduced from 307 over the Easter weekend in 2024 to 167 in 2025, which is a 45% decrease. All provinces recorded decreases in fatalities except Mpumalanga, where there was a small increase. There were 28 fatalities in Mpumalanga compared with 22 in 2024.
Amnesty International's annual report says the global system of law and human rights is under threat from the multiplicity of assaults that have gathered pace since U.S. President Donald Trump's return to office. The Global Rights Organization described him as a super accelerator of existing trends. Israel also marked a strong criticism, being accused of committing genocide in Gaza, allegations the government has repeatedly denounced. The BBC's Imogen Folks has the details.
Amnesty has tough words for Donald Trump, accusing him of showing utter contempt for human rights. The attacks on migrants or gender equality and diversity are examples. Globally, such repression is not new. Amnesty points to the poor records of China or Russia. But Amnesty believes that when the US, once called the leader of the free world, abandons hard-won rights, it's a green light for would-be dictators the world over.
For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Good morning, guys. In our sports headline, Tasmin Breds struck a magnificent century in a losing cause as India's women beat South Africa in the first ODI in Sri Lanka. And Zimbabwe Netball Association president is delighted to collaborate with other nations to help grow the sport on the continent. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
All right, let's get into our Africa Roundup now, where every day after the 6 o'clock news, we take a look at some stories that we need to look out for, either what's happened yesterday as a wrap and also throwing forward into what we can expect in terms of updates on this new day. We go to Rwanda first, where the foreign minister there, Olivier Nduhungirehe, has confirmed that he's facilitating the movement of SADC troops and equipment from Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo through his country and into Tanzania for repatriation. SADC terminated the deployment of its troops to the DRC last month. Operations were halted due to a major advance of Rwandan-backed M23 rebels in eastern DRC. Sherwin Bryce Peace has more.
Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe confirmed to SABC News that they were providing safe passage to Sami DRC and the equipment from their troop-contributing countries, which include South Africa, Malawi and Tanzania. SADC decided to terminate its deployment in eastern Congo following the deaths of 17 soldiers, bringing their December 2023 deployment to help restore peace in eastern Congo in support of the DRC government to a rapid end. Sami DRC troops were confined to their bases for months following the Rwandan-backed M23 advance in the region. Reports suggest the Sami DRC convoy will travel to Chato in northwestern Tanzania before repatriation to various countries. Sherwin Bryce's SABC News, New York.
The UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs warns that ongoing clashes in southern Kivu province in the Democratic Republic of Congo are severely affecting civilians and disrupting aid efforts. In Walungu territory, local authorities there report that recent fighting has left at least 10 civilians dead and displaced many others. The UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric has more.
The violence has disrupted both economic activities and humanitarian operations in the area. In Kalehe territory, Minova Hospital has reported multiple cases of rape and physical assault in recent days amid the deteriorating situation in the area. Meanwhile, in Fizi territory, amid intense fighting last week, that led to looting of health centers and the burning of several schools, critically undermining access to essential services. That's what local authorities are telling us. We, of course, reiterate our call to all parties in the South Kivu province to uphold their obligations under international humanitarian law, including the protection of civilians, civilian infrastructure, and to ensure safe and unimpeded access for humanitarian aid to those who need it desperately.
Public hearings are underway at the International Court of Justice in The Hague to examine Israel's obligations in connection with its activities in the occupied Palestinian territory. Since March the 2nd, Israel completely cut off all supplies to the 2.3 million residents of the Gaza Strip, and food stockpiled during a ceasefire at the start of the year has all but run out. William Denzelo has more.
One of the most concise summaries that we've heard so far came from Belgium's representative speaking a little earlier today, shortly before the lunchtime recess, when Belgium said that Israel must carry out its military activities in accordance with international law, not counter or contrary to international law. We have heard from South Africa's representatives, and essentially one of South Africa's representatives, Jamie Hendricks, had laid out what South Africa wanted to see from Israel, as well as the United Nations and the international community. Looking briefly at Israel, well, they called for a ceasing of what he described as wrongful acts. He said he wanted to see action taken, including reparations. He said that Israel needed to comply with its obligations as an occupying power.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has warned the Security Council that the prospect of a two-state solution is now in danger of vanishing. He was speaking during the Council's quarterly open debate on the Middle East, which included the Palestinian issue.
The political commitment to this long-standing goal is farther than it has ever been. As a result, the rights of both Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace and security have been undermined, and the legitimate national aspirations of the Palestinians have been denied, while they endure Israel's continued presence that the International Court of Justice has found unlawful. And since the horrific 7 October terror attacks by Hamas, it has gotten worse on every front.
Ghana's government has launched the Ghana Medical Trust Fund, known as Mahama Cares, to provide financial support for people suffering from chronic diseases such as kidney failure, cancer and heart conditions. The event took place at the University of Ghana Medical Center in the capital Accra on Tuesday.
A landmark initiative introduced by my government to decisively confront the growing burden of chronic non-communicable diseases, for short NCDs. The fight against NCDs is intrinsically linked to our broader national development agenda, particularly the Sustainable Development Goals and most notably SDG 3, which enjoins us to ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. Specifically under SDG 3, Target 3.4, commits the global community to reduce premature mortality from NCDs by 1/3 by 2030 through prevention, treatment, and promotion of mental health and well-being.
South Africa's National Police Commissioner General Fani Masemola has confirmed that 3 of the 5 bodies recovered from a river in Centurion, that's just north of Johannesburg, are those of constables who went missing last Wednesday.
It is with deep sorrow that I confirm that our 3 members have been found together with 2 other bodies, one being of an administration clerk or a gardener from Littleton Police Station. And we are still continuing the search with a view to find the vehicle, and the investigation will reveal as to what has happened. We do not want to jump into conclusions.
And that's how we come to the end of Africa Roundup. We'll have more for you tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. Stay with us. We're going to be taking a look at some of the biggest stories that have played out across West Africa as we talk to one of our regular commentators, Dr. Matsanga. Stand by for that.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 6:15 Central African time, and it's time for us to take a look at what's been happening across West Africa. And we're now joined by a political commentator who's also the founder and chairman of the Pan-African Forum. Always good to have you on the program, Dr. David Matsanga. Welcome.
Good morning, my brother Peter. Good morning. We are still fighting for a better Africa. Thank you very much. You and I, we have been there.
La lutte continue.
Yes.
So let's begin in Burkina Faso. A week after an attempted coup in the country, the situation there remains tense. What's your take on what's happening? I was talking to an analyst the other day, and he says, look, everyone is going to do. There are many people with interests in Burkina Faso who do anything they can to make sure that the Traoré project doesn't work.
Yes, it is. That analyst was correct, but let me tell you, if this was the wrong tree that the French and Americans are climbing, they are going to have their Waterloo here. We are aware, most of it. I have been to Burkina Faso, as I told you, 6 times. I've been there, I've seen the projects that this young man is doing. I've seen how things have transformed into currency. You can get your currency in 20 minutes. If you want to exchange to $1, you want to go to India, you want to go to where you take your patient, 20 minutes, you get the money. The hospitals, there's medicine. Schools are beginning to be built, roads are being built. This is something different compared to what the former political civilian governments were doing in Burkina Faso. But let me tell you, Ibrahim Touré is not only from Burkina Faso. He has lit the whole Africa. You touch him, they will touch you. Everybody. Americans have to be very careful with the French. We know what their plan is. They are based in Ivory Coast. You know, Ivory Coast has always been the problem of that place. And you know very well, those days, Thabo Mbeki and I were involved in the negotiations to save Babugo. I see a lot, as you ask me, a lot again coming up in Ivory Coast. We never know. The French want to create a war around that area. And I'm always very frank, very open. I want a debate with them. Why members of the United Nations Security Council want to create war instead of creating peace?
All right, so still with the Burkina Faso part of this next story, together with Mali and Niger, they've endorsed Morocco's initiative to provide them with access to Atlantic ports, aiming to bolster trade routes after their withdrawal from ECOWAS. How might this shift in trade alliances affect the economic and political landscape of West Africa, in your view?
It does shift. But one of the things that I am again giving, I am always open again. I'm frank. I am one of the few people in Africa who discusses the question of Western Sahara, the Sahrawi Republic, the Sahrawis that have who have suffered the occupation of Morocco. I have told Touré and others that please watch out about Morocco. Morocco is an axis of very dangerous politics on the continent of Africa. And therefore, you might lose your credibility by getting involved with Morocco to export things through there when Sahrawis, 5 million of them, are scattered around the whole world, including South Africa, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Kenya, and so on. I'm carefully telling them, be careful about the opening of that route towards the Atlantic Ocean. But be very steady on knowing that Sahrawis have supported an independent, free Africa without any injuries of Moroccan bad politics. I don't know why we even invited Morocco back to African Union, Peter. It should have not come back. It should have gone forever. Morocco discriminates against we black people. When we are there, we don't look like Africans in that place. Morocco, Tunisia have become those states in the North Africa that are actually slaughtering, killing, beating up black Africans who come from south of Sahara.
All right. Human rights organizations are urging Liberian President Joseph Boakai to renew his executive order establishing an office to set up a war crimes court addressing atrocities from the civil wars between 1989 and 2003. The current order is going to expire May 1 tomorrow. What are the potential consequences for Liberia's pursuit of justice and reconciliation if this mandate actually lapses?
That is one of the most obnoxious, silly, stupid route that Liberia is trying to follow. We have closed that chapter. We have sealed that chapter. The wounds have healed. You don't need to open wounds now because we have already passed what we call a redemption strategy. 2 elections, about 3 presidents since that war. You want to go back to that same wound, open it up. That is very silly. And I want to use those words so that the MPs can get angered and come back to me, not your station. It is very dangerous for you at the moment to open up any other cases of the past. We sealed it with Taylor going to jail. He's serving his sentence of 53 years. I have been there. We know what Obasanjo did. The way Obasanjo left us again with Thabo Mbeki and Chisano at the airport somewhere in Cote d'Ivoire, disappeared and handed over Mr. Taylor to the UN, to Kofi Annan. We have been there. Peter, let's not go back to open wounds. As some African countries, instead of opening those wounds, fight corruption. There's plenty of corruption in Liberia. Fight it. Don't go back to fight by opening up wounds. Who killed who? We have moved over 20, coming to almost 30 years. Why do you want to open that wound? Opening that wound would cause quite a lot of problems since you don't have people that you have given food for free, school fees for free, uniforms, medicine for free. People are still struggling. Why do you want to go back to remind them of what happened, yet you cannot solve the current needs? You should have done like this, like opening up another wound in South Africa, where you say, let's go for truth and reconciliation in South Africa, Commission of Tutu. That will be dangerous again today. Some people might not like it. Some people will use it for their advantage.
Yeah, there'll definitely be people on different sides on that particular issue. Tomorrow, May the 1st, Ghana will prohibit foreigners from participating in local gold trading. And the newly established Ghana Gold Board will oversee all transactions aiming to curb illegal mining and increase state revenue. What impact do you think this policy could have on Ghana's mining sector and its relationship with foreign investors?
Foreign investors have come disguised as foreign investors, yet they are foreign distractors. Ghana has a policy, and Ghana is not targeting black Africans, and anybody from Africa is not a foreigner in Ghana. It's the only country in Africa where you enter, your passport is very clean as long as you say, I am Dr. David Matanga, born in Uganda in that year, Peter, born in this country, that year, you come and go and set up your business, do whatever you want. They are not targeting us from Africa. They are targeting Chinese, they are targeting Canadian companies, they are targeting American companies, because America is chasing us from their country. America is telling us to leave. Why do we want them here? They got this. You know, there is one thing African leaders should do. If we united and said, okay, thank you very much, you Americans want Africa more than we want America. What is in America apart from going to see guns, everybody armed with a gun in the house? What is that? What is in America? For me, if Dr. David Matang, even if you gave me $10 million, I will not live in America ever. because I considered it a state of violence. It ignites violence. Look at Trump. What he's doing is violence. He doesn't know what is happening in South Africa. He said white people are being told to leave the farms. Where are they being told to leave the farms? America exports violence. The doctrine of American democracy, which has turned into transactional democracy, is going to cause problems. That's why Ghana is telling some of these American companies to get out by tomorrow. Yes, you remember, Ghana is following what the neighbors there are doing. If you hear your neighbor has got a good house, a good road, medicine, do you want to stay without medicine in your own hospital? Remember, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso are neighbors around there. The words across there are coming back to Ghanaians. When you fly into Burkina Faso, you get medicine quickly. When you fly, you get US dollar quickly. It is easier to go through Burkina Faso than going through Nigeria to get your money, your foreign exchange, because Nigeria doesn't have. There is no money. There is plenty of money in Nigeria, but it doesn't have money of $10,000 in the 20 minutes if you want to change it from naira to dollar. So what type of country is this in Africa?
Right.
It is time for us to stand up, Peter, and say enough is enough. Ghana is doing a great job to make sure that foreigners don't start mining and taking their concessions, the mining concessions. In Uganda, for example, we are blocked. You don't take out our gold. No, I thank President Museveni for doing that. You don't export gold from Uganda. Nowhere. All the gold is kept.
Right.
And it is not sold outside or exported. So
Okay.
Ghana is doing the right thing to stop foreigners, Chinese, Americans, Canadians, and
All right. Let's move.
For a long time.
Let's move to Mali now, which has recommended that junta leader Assimi Goïta be appointed president with a 5-year mandate, dissolving existing political parties and delaying elections indefinitely. How do you think this development will affect Mali's democratic transition and its standing with the international community? Whilst similar to Burkina Faso, it's not quite the same.
Let me tell you what is democracy. Has there been a democracy in Mali? From Konare to all these leaders, there has been corruption, not democracy. Let me tell you, my brother, Bamako has improved a bit as a result of a military guy there. I am not telling people to pick up guns and go and fight. I'm saying the truth. But the army in Mali have done better than civilian governments that were there before. So what type of democracy is that when a section of your country is under siege from militants sponsored, equipped, supplied by France? Remember that. Supplied. You know, we have very terrible members of United Nations Security Council, Peter. There's no more United Nations Security Council in the world. This guy sponsors even terrorists, even give them uniforms. Look at the way they are killing us in East Africa. We know where Al-Shabaab gets their uniform, from Qatar. The uniform of the Al-Shabaab looks like the uniform of Qatar. Then you tell us you don't know where the terrorists come from. You say we shall bomb them. It is just an extension of war. What is happening in Mali is very, very clear determination by the people of Mali to clean the slate, to remove corruption, to remove insurgency that has been sponsored, supplied, and equipped by the French. You know very well that is all there. Gaddafi died and I told you.
All right. Dr. Masanga, unfortunately, we've run out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. But I want to say thank you very much indeed for your contribution. As always, greatly appreciated your insights on the program. And that brings us to 6:30, which means it's time for your news headlines with Jwalane Tulo-Mwepe.
SABC News Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Making headlines, Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe has confirmed that he's facilitating the movement of SADC troops and equipment from Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo through his country into Tanzania for repatriation. SADC terminated the deployment of its troops to the DRC last month. Leading human rights organizations have renewed calls for investigations into the killing of protesters by Kenya's security forces during demonstrations against a rise in taxes last June. This follows a BBC Africa Eye investigation exposing members of the security forces who shot dead 3 protesters at Kenya's parliament, igniting public outrage and demands for justice. And finally, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has used his election victory speech to assert his country's sovereignty in the face of annexation and trade threats by US President Donald Trump that upended campaigning. I will have details on these and other stories at 7 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
All right, let's get our first sports update here on Rise and Shine for this Wednesday. It's the 30th of April. Here's Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning, guys. Let's start off with the cricket news. Tasmin Bred struck a magnificent century in a losing cause as India's women beat South Africa by 15 runs in a dramatic one-day international, the ODI, in scorching heat in the R. Premadasa Stadium in Colombo, Sri Lanka yesterday. India have now won both their matches and topped the try table with 4 points. South Africa and Sri Lanka meet for the first time on Thursday in a competition that is part of their build-up for the ICC Women's World Cup in India in 5 months' time. And there are no reports that are coming out from Zambia that the Nora Hotel, the national women's team coach, has not been paid her salary for the last 3 months. The Football Association of Zambia, FAZ, appointed the Swiss national as Copa Queens coach on a 3-year deal in January of this year. Channel Africa Sport reached out to the spokesperson of the association, Signe Mongala, who refuted these claims made by the media.
As the Football Association of Zambia would like to set the record straight as regards the reported non-payment of the salary for Zambia Women National Team coach Nora Hutle, that she has gone unpaid for 3 months. These reports are obviously untrue. The position regarding Nora's salary is that she has a contract with FAZ and part of her salary is paid by government.
Channel Africa Sport understands that Coach Hoptel earns a monthly salary of $7,000. Mongala further explains that FAZ pays 70% of the salary while the government contributes 30%.
Because as you know, we also have to respect our partner government who we do not speak for. So I think as far as the Football Association of Zambia is concerned, we have met all our obligations towards the coach since our arrival. And just for the record, the coach is actually met. The FAZ meets 70% of the coach salary, and government weighs in with 30%. So I think this is important. In case of any other issue to clarify this matter, people are free to reach out to either government or ourselves as we've gained a position. But as far as we are concerned, Coach Nora has settled very well in her new role.
And in netball news, Zimbabwe Netball Association President Leticia Chimpandu says collaboration amongst African teams is important to help grow the sport on the continent. Chimpandu adds that she is happy to see the Zambezi Eagles feeding from one of the top nations in netball.
No, I believe together we will conquer. As individuals, we don't perform much. We saw this as an opportune time for us to network with South Africa, partner with South Africa. South Africa is the biggest sister in Africa in netball. They are position 5 in the world, and we believe we will be learning from the best in Africa.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Hello, Africa. We would love to hear your voice on our radio station. Be part of the fun and send a shout out or greeting message to your loved ones and your favorite Channel Africa presenters. Whether you're in Africa, the diaspora, or anywhere else around the globe, we want to hear your voice. Send your shout out message by sending an email to info@channelafrica.co.za or send them to our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages. Help us diversify our sound with your voice. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
And for a first look at what's happening on the business and economics front, it's time to say good morning to Tabiso Lehuko.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and good morning. South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile says that the country's G20 presidency is a crucial chance for Africa to advance its economic and developmental priorities on the global stage. Speaking in Pretoria at the opening of a two-day T20 high-level dialogue yesterday, Mashatile highlighted the importance of strengthening Africa's voice within the G20, a group that represents 85% of the global GDP and 75% of international trade. Mashatile explains.
The South African G20 presidency provides us with an opportunity to take meaningful steps towards addressing economic and developmental issues in Africa. Since 1999, South Africa has been a member of the G20, which accounts for 85% of global GDP and 75% of international trade. This group is crucial for global economic cooperation.
Nearly 3 million travellers entered and exited South Africa in March. According to Stats SA's data, 75% were foreign travellers. Arrivals of foreign travellers increased by 8%. Their departures increased by 14.5%, and transits increased by 24% compared to February. Nothando Makutulela reports.
Stats SA says the holiday continues to be the main reason of visits to the country. Other reasons include business, studies, and medical treatment. According to Stats SA data, the majority of tourists were from Southern African Development Community countries, and travel by road was the most commonly used mode of transport. Stats SA says the number of overseas tourists who come to South Africa is generally the highest in the first and fourth quarters of the year.
Belgian Foreign Minister Maxime Prévost says Belgium is open to deep involvement in the Democratic Republic of Congo's minerals sector. The Foreign Minister is on a visit to the former Belgian colony, which is seeking to diversify its investment partners. The vast Central African nation is home to large reserves of copper, cobalt, lithium and uranium, among other minerals, but chronic instability has long been an obstacle to the foreign investment needed to fully develop them. Kinshasa is currently on a push to attract new players to the sector, and talks are already underway with Washington after a Congolese senator pitching a minerals for security deal contacted to U.S. officials. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has said that he had a productive meeting with the representatives of tech billionaire Elon Musk's Starlink on Tuesday. The satellite internet company is looking to establish a presence in the East African country. A unit of SpaceX, Starlink, is rapidly expanding its services on the African continent and is already live in more than a dozen countries. It was granted licenses by Somalia and Lesotho earlier this month. It is unclear if Starlink has already formally applied for a license to operate in Uganda. The dollar in Nigeria will cost you 1,000 naira 606, Botswana 13.60, Kenya 128 shilling 27, Zambia 27 kwacha 89. The BRICS countries, Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 67, Russia 82 rubles 34, India 85 rupees 20, China 7 yuan 29, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 18 rand 61. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Gold $3,311. Platinum is at $985 per ounce. Brand crude oil is at $65.27 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Thabiso Lohoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. G20 in Africa. Exclusive to Channel Africa.
On this Wednesday, the 30th of April, our G20 fact is that young people make up 60% of Africa's population, yet the lack of employment opportunities threatens to turn a demographic divided into a demographic disaster. South Africa's G20 leadership is expected to ensure that employment is at the forefront of discussions. That's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa. Exclusive to Channel Africa. Championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Right, let's take a look at this story now. The Executive Director of the African Economic Research Consortium in Kenya, Professor Victor Murinde, has called for bold, innovative thinking to reshape Africa's future as the continent navigates a turbulent global economic landscape. Professor Murinde has emphasized the need for Africa to seize the opportunity of South Africa's leadership in the G20 this year to bring an economic voice into global economic architecture. He underscored the importance of linking trade, industrial policy, and energy development, how to overcome barriers to achieving the continent's Agenda 2063 vision. Channel Africa reporter Michael Mbewe spoke to Professor Victor Murinde.
As the African Economic Research Consortium, the ERC, which I lead, is a Pan-African institution headquartered in Nairobi. We believe this is a great opportunity that South Africa is convening the G20 meetings. It's an acknowledgement of the role that South Africa can actually now play in the global economy. Therefore, pouring the whole weight of the African continent to be able to bring in the African dimension in the global economic architecture and economic development. We have to use this opportunity to be able to put forward the concerns, the problems, and also solutions, possible solutions, where we can lead as Africans to actually devise our own solutions to the challenges we face.
So Africa is navigating an increasingly turbulent, complex, and uncertain geopolitical environment. It is now more than ever imperative for Africa to leverage its strategic and global influence to achieve its strategic development ambitions, encapsulated in Agenda 2063. How can Africa reshape the emerging global order?
Yes, it is true that Africa is now at the forefront of some of the issues. Some of the issues are external, in other words, the global economic development, the geopolitics, the changing in the behavior of the OECD countries, the protectionism, the trade wars. These are externally generated. But it's also true to say that there are some of the internal dynamics within the African continent, in particular economic fragility and political fragility on the African continent. That is very worrying. But we have to be optimistic. That's the first point is we have to be very optimistic. We have to be able to put in place the mechanism for being able to deliver Agenda 2063, come heavy rain or high water. What should we do? We at the African Economic Research Consortium have a suggestion that we do a pre-mortem, not a post-mortem to analyze what has gone wrong. That will take us way back into millions of years. we do a pre-mortem. We stand in 2063 and we look back to where we are in 2025 and we ask ourselves the question, how can we travel this terrain and so that by 2063 we achieve all those aspirations we want to do? That's number one. Secondly, what is it that could go wrong that might derail Africa from achieving the dreams of 2063? That's the pre-mortem we must undertake. And when we do that pre-mortem, there are things which are very clear. Number one, we know we are designing the African Continental Free Trade Area. Important for goods, important for services. We know we are designing the industrial policy. That's very important to be able to produce and rely on agriculture to go to industry. We know we are thinking about energy transitions, how to be able to generate enough power for the continent. However, one thing we must do in all these three is actually link the three because they are interlinked. If we fail to observe the interconnectedness of these three elements, we will not be able to achieve what we are trying to do. Because we have to trade, and from trade we have to produce goods and services from industrial policy to be able to trade even among ourselves. We also have to have enough energy to be able to design the industrial policy and also to trade. The three are completely interlinked. We can't separate them.
Africa continues to face economic decline, also increasing debt burden. The continent remains heavily reliant on primary commodities for exports, leaving it susceptible to market fluctuations, price volatility, and decreasing demand. How can developing countries examine and manage external debt and secure growth financing?
This is absolutely important. Africa has relied on primary commodities, even when some of the developing countries in East Asia, Latin America have moved away from that. We have now to proceed from those primary commodities to create value added, to be able to invest in innovation, because value added is not simply achieved by just simple processing. No, the value added has to have the highest innovation. We take advantage of technologies, new technologies, to be able to create value added and produce commodities that will be acceptable not only within Africa but outside Africa. Otherwise, if we use very outmoded methods of manufacturing, our commodities will not be in high demand. So it's very important that we have, from the researching the weight, then innovation to be able to create value added and be able to deliver his highest transition from being a primary producer to an exporter and a driver of international trade. Whether you are thinking of agricultural commodities, whether you are thinking in terms of critical minerals, whether you are thinking of any primary product, innovation has to be there, value added will be there, and leadership in international trade has to be there.
That was the Executive Director of the African Economic Research Consortium in Kenya, Professor Victor Morinde, speaking to Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
Since 2023, global reports have painted a picture of South Africa being transformed into a hotbed for fraud, with scammers and fraudsters going to great lengths to carry out elaborate schemes that are convincing enough to transform even the most vigilant person into an unwitting victim. The Southern African Fraud Prevention Service, or the SAFPS, is warning the public against a scam in which scammers are posing as members of the South African Police Service, or the SAPS, who trick and intimidate individuals into handing over personal and financial information to them. In extreme cases, victims are even manipulated into transferring funds to these scammers. To speak to us about this, on the line we're joined by Nazia Karim, who is Head of Product Development at the SAFPS. Nazia, good morning to you and thank you for making time.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's our pleasure. What are the most common types of fraud in South Africa, and are there certain provinces that record numbers that are higher than others when it comes to these common types?
Well, the most common types of scams in South Africa are advanced fee scams, investment scams, and cyber scams. This also is very much attuned to the way our economy and population operates. If you think about it, from advanced fee scams, here the victims are actually required to pay for something in advance, and very much involved in the loan scam and online shopping arenas, where people are actually paying for services. For example, if they're purchasing something online, assuming that it will get delivered, and they put up their credit card details, they put up their residential information, and they're actually under the assumption that they're buying a particular product, give this information away, only to realize nothing's going to be coming in return. And in some cases, if they put their payment information, they lost their credit card information as well, and then suddenly they have transactions running off their accounts. Unfortunately, investment scams is also something quite rife in South Africa. I mean, unemployment is quite high, so people are looking for alternative ways to make an income. And investments are usually the road you take to be able to develop a passive income. So that's another avenue the scammers are targeting. And today, we all have a cell phone. Every single person has a cell phone in their pocket, and cyber scams targeting you every which way, using your cell phone, getting you that information, asking you to click on that link, and hoping that you compromise yourself.
So who would you say are the most vulnerable then in terms of being targets? It sounds like we all are.
We all definitely are. There is no discrimination in terms of who's targeted. You can be the most educated official, you can be the general of the police force, and you will still be targeted. And you can be the simple person on an everyday journey. The problem is everybody is a target. It is the responsibility of every person who's making themselves available to the particular technologies that we have available today. For example, on your cell phone, if you're using a smartphone, it's one of the most intelligent pieces of technology you have today. Your entire life is stored on that device. If you lose that device, you lost your bank, you lost your phone, you lost your camera, you lost your documents, you lost almost everything about your life today, and you've given it away to somebody who has the ability to maybe hack your device and access that information. So it's very important to be very cognizant about how you actually share that information, who you share with that information with. And if somebody sends you any links or asks you to download any information or apps, why are they sending it to you via this channel? What is the reason that it's coming in this fashion? You shouldn't be downloading anything that's not coming off a formalized application store at all.
So the SAPS impersonation scam, how widespread is this in the country, and what is the modus operandi exactly?
Well, the scam has been rife across the country. It's targeting victims across all 9 provinces. But in the recent months, the impersonation of the Bloemfontein police station has been particularly popular. Unfortunately, the impersonation of government officials has also been very particularly popular. And in the last few months, we've received numerous reports from victims for everything from impersonation of RDP housing officials to water department assessors, and now it's becoming even more rife with the SAPS impersonation. The scammers, they actually land up calling the victim. They're impersonating the police official from a particular police station, usually outside the jurisdiction of where the target is actually residing. And they use the formal tone of conversation, the SAPS terminology and ranking, and they end up accusing the person of being complicit in either a drug trafficking or human trafficking incident or any other form of illicit activity, stating that their details and information was found while they were doing this investigation. And this usually grabs the attention of the victim, because now you're worried, how is my information landing up in this type of activity? What happened? And so they have your attention. And then to press that point, they'll start sending you documentation, and they send it to you via WhatsApp. And when you open this the documentation, it looks actually like the real document. And if you're not familiar with it, you'll unsure what to do, and you set in panic. They're sending out warrants of arrest, search and seizure warrants. And if someone who doesn't know that these things are supposed to be served to you by a sheriff, you are going to believe that is exactly an investigation document. This person on the phone is definitely a police officer. I need to comply. And unfortunately, they think that they are under investigation, and they become desperate to prove their innocence, and they give away all their personal information, including their bank statements, to the scammer online. Sometimes even downloading a fake SAPS app that the scammer will send via that WhatsApp chat. And once they install that app and give the thing the relevant permissions, the malware gets to work, and the victim's devices and applications are compromised.
So what are the steps that as individuals we can take to verify whether we are genuinely dealing with an SAPS officer? And I guess it speaks a lot to education and awareness.
Yes, it definitely does. And I think the first thing everybody needs to know is that a police officer by law is required to identify themselves. And you have the right to confirm this by contacting the SAPS. And don't use the contact number they're going to give you. Go online, go to the official SAPS website and look up the contact number. Or if you have your local police station, go to your local police station and confirm that information before you start that conversation. You also don't have to share anything with that particular police officer without consulting with your lawyer or a third party. You have the right to say, I want to do that. And they can't force you into giving out that information. They can't intimidate you in any way, form, or manner either. If that particular supposed SAPS official insists that you give them screenshots or copies of your bank statements via WhatsApp, or wants to make a video call, it's a scam. Use your intuition. Hang up immediately. If something feels off, it usually is. Especially if they start sending you warrants of arrest via WhatsApp, and then they're calling you to make a video call statement via WhatsApp. You want to ask why. If this is so important, why aren't you asking me to go into a police station to make my statement? Right. So logical questions you do need to stop and think about. The problem is the victim is usually very stressed at this point in time, not sure what to do, and they want to comply because they're trusting in the South African police services, but at the same time they're unaware of the process that they're supposed to follow.
Has the SAFPS collaborated with law enforcement and other institutions relevant to this to combat this specific scam? It's quite scary because you see a South African police service member or you hear about it, you see the badge, you might even see I don't know if they do it physically, the uniform, and you immediately are called to submit.
Well, we have collaborated with law enforcement, in particular the 419 Scams Task Team, which is a division of the DPCI, on various incidents. And we'll continue to do so as we gather the intelligence to support the investigation. And this is the reason why it's so important for victims to come forward and report these incidents. One of our roles as SAFPS is to create awareness about the scam, to inform the citizens, this is what's happening out there, this is what you need to be cognizant of. And so when we inform you about the scam and schemes, we are looking to actually drive this awareness to help prevent it. And this is part of the role that we as SAFPS play to support the SAPS in this process.
Well, let's leave it there for today, but thank you so much. And we definitely do need to be, I don't even know if we can say vigilant. I think at this stage it needs to be education and awareness.
If I may just drop one last line. If for whatever reason you are contacted by a particular scammer, contact the police station mentioned for assistance if necessary. Use a number on the SAPS website, or contact the authorities via the SAFPS Lima Scams hotline. It's 083-123-SCAM, which is 7226. And you'll get through to the authorities and you'll be able to report an incident. Visit the website for more information.
All right. 083-123-SCAM. All right.
That's it.
Thank you so much again, Nazia. We appreciate your time. She is Head of Product Development at the SAFPS, that is the South African Fraud Prevention Service. That's how we end this first hour of Africa Rise and Shine, saying good morning to you as it's 7 o'clock Central African time, entering the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine. You are, of course, with Channel Africa. My name is Asanda Beda.
And I am Peter Ndoro. Thanks so much indeed, as Asanda was saying, for joining us for this second hour of the program. And what's coming up? Well, let me tell you, we're going to be taking a look at issues in Angola and Egypt, trucking symposium, and also Donald Trump, 100 days in office. And do you know, Asanda, that he has got the lowest approval rating of a president's first 100 days, I think, in more than 100 years.
8 decades, I think. Was it 39%, 34%?
Yeah, exactly.
Somewhere there in the 30s.
So a lot of people have got buyer's remorse.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah. Stay with us with that. Right now, though, it's time for the news with Jwalani Tulo Ngwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe has confirmed that he's facilitating the movement of SADC troops and equipment from Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo through his country and into Tanzania for repatriation. SADC terminated the deployment of its troops in the DRC last month. Operations were halted due to a major advance of Rwandan-backed M23 rebels in eastern DRC. Sharon Price Pease reports.
Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe confirmed to SABC News that they were providing safe passage to Sami DRC and the equipment from their troop-contributing countries, which include South Africa, Malawi and Tanzania. SADC decided to terminate its deployment in eastern Congo following the deaths of 17 soldiers, bringing their December 2023 deployment to help restore peace in eastern Congo in support of the DRC government to a rapid end. Sami DRC troops were confined to their bases for months following the Rwandan-backed M23 advance in the region. Reports suggest the Sami DRC convoy will travel to Chato in northwestern Tanzania before repatriation to various countries.
Leading human rights organizations have renewed calls for investigations into the killing of protesters by Kenya's security forces during demonstrations against a rise in taxes last June. This follows a BBC African Eye investigation exposing members of the security forces who shot dead 3 protesters at Kenya's parliament, igniting public outrage and demands for justice. Amnesty International and the Kenya Human Rights Commission said the officers identified in the documentary should face the law. The wider clampdown by the security forces on a series of protests against the finance bill left at least 65 people dead. The government of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo have agreed to come up with a draft peace deal by May the 2nd to end the conflict that has wrecked the east of the DRC for more than 3 years. The ministers of foreign affairs of both countries signed the declaration in the United States. Chris Okamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The DRC and Rwanda have committed to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. They also agreed to stop providing military support to non-state armed groups. The two countries also committed to facilitate the repatriation of Congolese refugees who fled to neighboring countries. They are expected to come up with a draft of the implementation of the peace agreement by May 2nd. Qatar and the US are mediating talks between the DRC and Rwanda to end the war and facilitate trade deals in the lucrative mining sector for their private firms.
A witness who was a clerk at Stanger Hospital, where the late former ANC President Chief Albert Lutuli was admitted, has testified at the reopened inquest in Pietermaritzburg High Court in the KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. Mahamud Manju informed the court that after seeing Chief Luthuli being checked in at the hospital unaccompanied, he alerted some local ANC leaders. The Luthuli family wants the court to overturn findings of the initial apartheid-era inquest that ruled Luthuli's death as an accident. Evidence leader advocate Anne Chweni cross-examined Mohammed.
Is there anything extraordinary that you may have noticed about his clothing? Perhaps the condition of his clothing?
As I learned later on, I was told that he was knocked by a train and he fell in on the Mvoti railway bridge. And then I was told that it's on the other account that's from Mr. Samuel was that it was in the shunting yard. Now there's two different scenarios there in terms of injuries. If it was on the Mvoti bridge, then if the train knocked him at speed, the injuries would have been massive. Also, if he fell on the side of the railway track, his whole body would have been soiled with.
And finally, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has used his election victory speech to assert his country's sovereignty in the face of annexation and trade threats by US President Donald Trump that upended campaigning. It's unclear if Carney's Liberal Party has secured an outright majority, but the result marks a remarkable comeback. The BBC's Nada Tawfik has the details.
The party secured a rare fourth consecutive term, in no small part thanks to Donald Trump. Ultimately, Canadians decided the former central banker was the stronger leader to take on the U.S. president's tariffs and threats of annexation. Mark Carney will now have to turn his attention to the country's southern neighbor to secure a deal with Donald Trump.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Cholani Tulongwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headlines, Namibia's junior women's and men's hockey teams have qualified for the Junior World Cups in Chile and India. And in cricket, Tasmin Brett says the conditions in Sri Lanka contributed against India in their first ODI. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Good morning. If you've just joined us, let's thank the team on production. We have Hlengiwe Mabaso and Joey Likhodi, as well as Pumuzo Ramagadza. On technical production is Nanda Koza this week. On news, Jwalane Tulongwepe. On sports, Fikile Lingwati. On economics news, Tabiso Lehoku. On our social media is Talent Butelezi. Of course, you hear Peter and Asanda on the air, but it takes a team and it takes a village to make Rise and Shine happen. Do let us know about your views or questions you might have. We are online on our social media platforms. We are at Channel Africa 1, that is on X, on Instagram, as well as TikTok, and then Facebook. We are Channel Africa. Troops from the Southern African Development Community have started withdrawing from their bases in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo after spending more than a year trying to help the Congolese army stave off a rebel offensive. Their pullout comes a month later, or a month after leaders of the regional bloc terminated their mission following an escalation in fighting that led to the fall of the city of Goma. Chris Ochamringa reports from Kinshasa.
Soldiers from Malawi, Tanzania and South Africa have started pulling out from the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. They are traveling by road from the city of Goma through Rwanda to their assembly point in Tanzania. The troops were deployed in late 2023 by leaders of the Southern African Trade Bloc SADC to help the Congolese army fight the M23 rebels. But their mission was terminated in March following an increase in fighting. The M23 rebels captured the city of Goma in January, leaving 14 South African soldiers dead. Leaders of the SADC regional bloc had initially called for a phased withdrawal of the troops, but on April 12th, the M23 rebels ordered the immediate withdrawal of the SADC troops for allegedly carrying out joint operations with Congolese forces and the Wazalendo militia around the city of Goma. SADC officials denied their involvement. African leaders and the UN have called for the peaceful resolution of the conflict that pits the DRC, Rwanda, and the M23 rebels. Last week, Rwanda and the DRC signed an agreement in the US to end the conflict. Chris Ochamringa, SABC News, Kinshasa.
Right, it's 9 minutes past 7 Central African time. Let's take a look at this story now. Next week, Namibia will host the inaugural Erongo Offshore Safety Conference. 100 industry experts will gather at the MTC Dome in the city of Swakopmund to confront offshore risks, explore AI-driven solutions, and shape the future of safety in Erongo's expanding offshore oil and gas sector. Now, those behind the event say that it places a spotlight on innovation, best practices, and the critical need for operational safety as Namibia's energy ambitions accelerate. Channel Africa's business reporter Innocent Samosa has more for us.
Many African countries lack modern port facilities, deep water support bases, and logistical infrastructure to support large-scale offshore projects. The executive director of Silex Engineering, Toby Abimbola, says emerging technologies such as AI, IoT, and digital twins can help to transform safety protocols in offshore operations.
Personally, I think one of the greatest shifts that these emerging technologies of IoT, AI, and digital twin have brought is moving us from being reactive to being proactive. I'll make an example. Traditional instruments and method is that we gather information on field and gather data on field from different sources like the FPSO, and we can use pressure sensors, we can use temperature sensor, level gauges, and we can get this data, and we can get like weeks of worth of data, and then we take this data and then we go analyze it and then make decision based on the analysis of this data. Now, what this shift has done is that with emerging technology, we don't have to wait that long. First, second of all, we can make instantaneous decision because IoT instruments and gateways, what they do is that they make available instantaneous real-time data available to us instantly.
Abimbola shares some innovative digital tools that have been most effective in real-time monitoring and hazard detection in offshore environments.
There are quite a good number of innovative digital tools that are helping with effective real-time monitoring and hazard detection. But personally, I think I have two favorites. One of them is the IoT. The IoT has enabled us to come up with something called the Smart Sensor Network. A Smart Sensor Network is an array of sensors that are connected in a designed architecture that communicate with each other. And with this communication, they can help detect anomalies. They speak with each other, and because it is not just one sensor, the number of false positives really reduce, because the interaction make them have wider visibilities and have a balanced view of what's going on, and they can make decisions based on what they're looking at. So a smart sensor network can actually quickly alert. What it does is it does real-time monitoring and gives alert when there's an anomaly on field. And the other one, which is personally my favorite, is the AR, that's the augmented reality.
Meanwhile, cyber attacks targeting safety critical infrastructure remain a persistent threat in the offshore sector. The industry is now under increasing pressure to strengthen its cybersecurity measures and adopt proactive strategies to mitigate its growing risk.
Cybersecurity threats can never be overstated, and with increased connectivity comes increased risks from cyber attacks, especially now that we have emerging technologies like the IoT, the AI, and more digital connections within the safety industry. We need to be more conscious of these threats from cybersecurity and cyber attacks. And one of the biggest ways to eliminate these threats or to reduce cyber attacks is by proper employee training employees to be aware of phishing and cyber hygiene, giving them better understanding of password protection and all that likes of things. And the second thing is the IT/OT segmentation. Now, traditionally, a lot of people, a lot of companies would usually merge their IT corporate network to the OT world, where operations technology is mixed with the IT.
With experts calling for smarter infrastructure and digital transformation, the future of offshore operations will depend not just on what lies beneath the surface, but also on the technologies and protections built above it. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samos in Johannesburg.
Mix Vibration sur Channel Africa.
Nous allons accueillir sur ces plateaux de Mix Vibration un artiste pas comme les autres. Il est exceptionnel. Il se classe résolument dans la trajectoire des artistes qui défendent le patrimoine du folklore africain, mais aussi de la rumba. Ici, Jérémy Tchani.
En tout cas, je vous dis merci à la Channel Africa, à tout le monde qui nous suit. Dans la vie, si tu veux aller loin, il faut comprendre les temps. Il y a ceux-là qui étaient dans leur temps, mais à cause d'une mauvaise conduite, à cause des gens qui l'accompagnaient, à cause de sa famille, à cause beaucoup de choses, son temps passé.
Voilà, donc il faut toujours gérer le temps. Chaque chose a son temps, dit-on. Et la couronne ne dure pas éternellement, dit-on. Donc il faut toujours gérer le temps que Dieu vous a donné sur la terre. C'est le message que Jérémy Tchani nous amène aujourd'hui sur Mix Vibration à Channel Africa.
Mix Vibration, tous les dimanches de 18h à 19h, temps universel.
A fresh morning, a fresh perspective. Stay tuned to Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
It's 7:15 Central African Time. The Truck Driver Safety and Wellness Symposium is expected to be held next week in Johannesburg, South Africa. The organizers say the event is aimed at empowering, educating, and supporting truck drivers in every aspect of their well-being. It is also expected to provide truck drivers with the tools and knowledge they need to navigate the challenges of the profession. Sisi Sekhalo has more on this story.
According to the organizers, it will be a packed 2 days of engagements, which will try to address and find solutions to some of the pressing challenges facing truck drivers in South Africa. There's a litany of challenges facing truck drivers, from long hours, many days spent away from home, risk of lifestyle illnesses, high road accidents, and safety. The event will also look at the home-work balance for truck drivers. Chief Visionary at CVLC Communication, which are the co-hosts of this year's event, Catherine Lacken, explains what they are trying to achieve with the symposium.
So the Truck Driver Safety and Wellness Symposium, it is really exploring all aspects of wellness, whether it's mental, physical, social, financial, and technical. It really is about trying to create or facilitate the creation of an ecosystem, a healthy, safe ecosystem for truck drivers, so that they are well and safe while they are both on and off the road.
Lakin says there are over a dozen mobile clinics focusing on assisting truck drivers while on the job, and that they do not have to wait too long to seek medical attention.
At the symposium, we are fortunate to have trucking wellness there throughout the duration of the symposium. Now, trucking wellness is a project of the National Bargaining Council for the road freight and logistics industry, and they actually currently operate over 20 fixed clinics across South Africa. And they also have a number of mobile clinics that move in between provinces on the major highways to assist drivers. They offer a number of health-related services, including HIV awareness, information, education, counseling, and testing. And they also offer other services, such as condom use and education,
a trucking association looking after the well-being of truck drivers and helping with cross-border movements in the African continent, the Africa Unite Borders Trucks Association says while it welcomes the symposium, there are other pressing issues that need to be addressed in the industry. Chairperson of the association, Pumuzo Mukwati, elaborates further on them.
What we are requesting to see is the following, is to make sure that the delay of the trucks in the border, traffic, the congestion, and the violation of African continental trade market must be resolved. another thing that needs to be discussed is the issue of the accident that happened. Let's say if you get accident in the neighboring countries, there is no medication or a grip, anything. Another issue that we are also asking is the issue of saying financially in the truck industry, there is no more about finance. We can say we are being supported. So if maybe we can also address that issue to say truckers must self-finance, because as a country, like the government has introduced many financial institutions, but at the end, these institutions are not helping us as the truckers. And another issue that must be discussed, it must be also awareness regarding the fitness, fatigue of the drivers, including safety.
The symposium will bring together 200 truck drivers and 150 operators. For Channel Africa, I'm Sisi Sekhalo in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Channel Africa and you have got something in common. The thirst for knowledge.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has reaffirmed his country's readiness to fully support Angola in critical sectors, including police, defense, health, tourism, agriculture, renewable energy, anti-corruption and diplomacy. El-Sisi made the remarks during a meeting in Cairo with Angolan President João Lourenço. Lourenço's visit sought to strengthen bilateral relations between Egypt and Angola and enhance cooperation within the framework of the AU. The two leaders discussed regional peace and security across the African continent. And to discuss this further, we are joined on the line now by Angolan analyst Jose Gama. Jose, thank you for joining us this morning. How are you?
Well, good morning, ma'am.
Just how significant was the visit by Angolan President João Lourenço to Egypt?
Yeah, that's the first trip, that's the official trip that João Lourenço paid to Egypt since he became the president of Angola, and since he is becoming the president of African Union. And Angola and Egypt, they're linked by diplomatic relations since the country got national independence, and that's very significant because Angola is trying to diversify its economy, is trying to get so many partners in Africa, and now we see that Egypt also got a significant army industry, and Angola is a country that gets suppliers from Russia, and since the war between Russia and Ukraine starts, Angola separates. Split. The relation with Russia is freezing, and now Angola is trying to get some partner like Turkey, now Egypt, and we find that it's a part of the economic diplomacy that Lourenço is being engaged since he became the president of the country.
And President Lourenço is also chairperson of the African Union. Would you say that this serves as an even further significance and therefore translates to an even bigger interest on Egypt's side to want to strengthen relations?
Yes, Egypt is a country that is a very influential in that area of Africa. That's in that Arabic region, and Lourenço can take a chance, can take an opportunity to be close to Egypt and approach some of the countries around Egypt.
Right. Jose, are you there?
Yes.
All right. How would you describe the relations currently between the two countries, Angola and Egypt? In a press conference, President el-Sisi made a point that there are, as he called it, deep-rooted historical relations between the two countries.
Yes, the two countries, they start having diplomatic relations since 1975. So higher level delegation from, especially from Egypt has been going to Angola. They've got a trade volume of between 30 million to 40 million per year, and that's an opportunity that they can get some more engagement, and they can improve the change of trading between the countries. Because Angola, as I said, that is the first time Lorenzo is paying a visit to Egypt. Egypt is a country that has many experience, especially in agriculture. And Angola is a country that depends its economy on oil, and now we are turning to agriculture. And Egypt is a country with experience that Angola can learn more and can take a chance on that.
Following the meeting, a memorandum of understanding was signed. Do we know what is covered in this MOU? Maybe one of the points you made, improving on trade and agricultural experience sharing, could have been in there.
So now what they need, they need a cooperation telecommunication and defense in the defense industry.
Mm-hmm.
They want a cooperation also in the health sector and pharmaceutical industry again. So at least these are the 2 points that Lorenzo wants from Egypt, and also wants help from Egypt in terms of mutual investment and infrastructure. That's also one of the third points that Lorenzo is expecting from his counterpart.
What do you make of the affirmation by Egyptian president, as we said in our introduction, that he wants to fully support Angola in critical sectors, namely, as we mentioned them before, anti-corruption, diplomacy, renewable energy, tourism, agriculture, which you've touched on. Is Egypt ready to provide this type of support, in your view?
Yeah, I think Egypt is ready, because Egypt is already implementing, is already in Angola. They do have some Egyptian company operating in Angola. So what they're going to do is just to strengthen his presence in the country. Because I can recall that Egyptian company is there and help Angola in terms of irrigation. So we're talking about agriculture, because that's one of the fields that the Egyptian company are busy in Angola.
What about accelerating institutional reform within the AU? This is something that the two leaders have also agreed on and touched on. What do you make of this?
You mean the reforms?
Yes, institutional reform specifically within the AU, and especially because there's mediation in the DRC that President Lorenzo has been part of.
Mm-hmm. Yes, African Union needed reforms. So Lorenzo is going to be chairing the institution for 1 year. So up to now, we don't know yet what kind of reforms he's going to do. But one of them, I think he needs to run is the free markets for Africa. I think that's one of the points that Lorenzo needs to push.
Mm. There's another meeting scheduled for later this year. What can we expect from that one?
Yeah, probably they should hold a meeting at the level of minister.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, probably Angolan minister all Egyptian minister will come to Angola to continue these discussions.
All right. Well, let's leave it there for today, Jose. We appreciate your time again.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us here on Channel Africa. That was Angolan analyst Jose Gama speaking about the meeting that took place between Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi and his Angolan counterpart, João Lourenço. Okay, we're going to get to our news headlines in just a bit with Jwalane Tulo. After that, we'll have our sports and economics update, respectively. And of course, we continue with our coverage of news making headlines in and around our continent here on Rise and Shine. Stay tuned for that chat on Trump having completed his first 100 days in office. That should be an interesting one. 7:30 Central African time now. Over to you, Jwalane.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines. Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe has confirmed that he's facilitating the movement of SADC troops and equipment from Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo through his country into Tanzania for repatriation. SADC terminated the deployment of its troops to the DRC last month. Leading human rights organizations have renewed calls for investigations into the killing of protesters by Kenya security forces during demonstrations against a rise in taxes last June. And finally, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney has used his election victory speech to assert his country's sovereignty in the face of annexation and trade threats by US President Donald Trump that upended campaigning. I will have details on these and other stories at 8 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Jwalane, thanks very much indeed. As you've just heard, she'll be back at the top of the hour with a full bulletin. Right now, though, let's find out what's happening in the world of sport as we say good morning once again to Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good morning once again to you, Peter, as well. Let's start off with football news. Paris Saint-Germain seized the advantage in the Champions League semi-final against Arsenal as Ousmane Dembele sealed a 1-0 win in the first leg. Dembele struck in the opening minutes at the Emirates Stadium, and Luis Enrique's side held on to the lead with a composed display that kept Arsenal at bay. PSG will head into the second leg at the Parc des Princes on the 7th of May as favourites to reach the final against Barcelona or Inter Milan as they look to win the tournament for the first time. But the French champions should take nothing for granted given their history of epic European collapses. Arsenal's first defeat in 18 home European matches was a painful blow to their own bid to win a first Champions League crown. On to cricket news. The Proteas women fell to a 15-run defeat in their ODI Tri-Series opener against India in Colombo despite a valiant century from Tasman Breds. Set a target of 277, Breds and captain Laura Volvart gave the Proteas the perfect start when the duo put on 140 for the first wicket. The partnership was broken in the 28th over when Volvart was trapped LBW by off-spinner Dipti Sharma, with the skipper walking back to dressing room after scoring 49 from 75 balls. Brett says the conditions were difficult to play under.
Yeah, so I think in general the heat over here on the subcontinents and the humidity is something that no South African is actually used to. So it was a bit tough for me, especially with us fielding first in 50 overs. And then batting, of course, so long. So I got a few cramps and I struggled a bit, but the heat definitely won today.
The Proteas women will take on host nation Sri Lanka in their next encounter at the same venue on Friday. Brett says she didn't think she would have to come back after the cramps.
I was hoping I didn't have to come back on due to the cramps, but I'm always eager to try and contribute and help the team where I can. It's not always a nice feeling. Sometimes I wonder if I maybe batted a bit longer or pushed myself a bit more, maybe we wouldn't have been in that situation, but I guess at the end of the day that is cricket. And of course I would have loved to get the team over the line.
On to netball news. Zimbabwe Netball Association ZNA President Letitia Chipandu says collaboration amongst African teams is important to help grow the sport on the continent. Chipandu joined other dignitaries for the 2025 South African Telkom Netball League opening ceremony at the Sun City Super Bowl in the Northwest Province. Chipandu adds that she is happy to see the Zambezi Eagles feeding from one of the top nations in netball.
No, I believe together we will conquer. As individuals, we don't perform much. We saw this as an opportune time for us to network with South Africa, partner with South Africa. South Africa is the biggest sister in Africa in netball. They are position 5 in the world, and we believe we will be learning from the best in Africa.
An American tennis star Coco Gauff's display was nothing short of brilliant against Belinda Bencic in only 83 minutes at the Madrid Open. Gauff swept Bencic 6-4, 6-2, showing the form that implies she is ready for a deep run. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fire Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mukwena@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African Perspective. Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's get our economics update now with Tabiso Lihoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. South Africa's Small Business Development Minister, Stella Ndabeni, maintains that the ocean's economy is there to benefit South Africans at large. Ndabeni, who has referred to the ocean's economy as South Africa's next gold mine, says it was important that everyone, including residents of townships, benefit. She stressed the importance of sustainable fishing, tourism, shipping, aquaculture, as well as oil and gas exploration, and the preservation of the health of the marine ecosystem.
We have been given fishing rights, and we're trying to assist them because most of them, they will complain that they don't have infrastructure. They are forced to go and fish, but they don't have access to market. As a result, they're being exploited. Now we're coming to step in to say this is the opportunity that must not only be exploited by those who can afford. How do we step in as the department? By ensuring that we provide them with the infrastructure.
South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile says that the country's G20 presidency is a crucial chance for Africa to advance its economic and developmental priorities on the global stage. Speaking in Pretoria at the opening of the two-day T20 high-level dialogue yesterday, Mashatile highlighted the importance of strengthening Africa's voice within the G20, a group that represents 85% of the global GDP and 75% of international trade. Mashatile explains.
The South African G20 presidency provides us with an opportunity to take meaningful steps towards addressing economic and developmental issues in Africa. Since 1999, South Africa has been a member of the G20, which accounts for 85% of global GDP and 75% of international trade. This group is crucial for global economic cooperation.
Belgian Foreign Minister Maxime Prévost says Belgium is open to deeper involvement in the Democratic Republic of Congo's mineral sector. The Foreign Minister is on a visit to the former Belgian colony, which is seeking to diversify its investment partners. The vast Central African nation is home to large reserves of copper, cobalt, lithium and uranium, among other minerals, but chronic instability has long been an obstacle to the foreign investment needed to fully develop them. Kinshasa is currently on a push to attract new players to the sector, and talks already underway with Washington after a Congolese senator pitching a minerals for security deal contacted U.S. officials. Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni has said that he had a productive meeting with the representatives of tech billionaire Elon Musk's Starlink on Tuesday. The satellite internet company is looking to establish a presence in the East African country. A unit of SpaceX, Starlink, is rapidly expanding its services on the African continent and is already live in more than a dozen countries. It was granted licenses by Somalia and Lesotho earlier this month. It is unclear if Starlink has already formally applied for a license to operate in Uganda. Oil prices have extended declines and were set for their largest monthly drop in more than 3 years as the global trade war eroded the outlook for fuel demand, while fears of mounting supply also weighed. Brent crude futures fell 72 US cents or 1.12% to $63.53 US dollars per dollar, rather per barrel. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures dropped 70 cents or 1.16% to $59.71 a barrel. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 601. Botswana 13 pula 537. Kenya 128 shilling 42 and Zambia 27 kwacha 87. The BRICS countries, Brazil, the dollar there 5 real 64, Russia 82 rubles 9, India 85 rupees 16, China 7 yuan 27, and in South Africa the dollar will cost you 18 rand 53. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Gold $3,331. Platinum is at $972 per ounce. Brand crude oil $64.25 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Hoku.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
The United Nations Secretary General has told the Security Council that the promise of a two-state solution was at risk of dwindling to the point of disappearance. Antonio Guterres was addressing a council's quarterly open debate on the Middle East, including the Palestinian question. He recalled how for nearly 2 months, Israel has blocked all life-saving humanitarian aid into the Gaza enclave amid the resumption of hostilities after the collapse of a ceasefire in March, while pointing to proceedings currently underway at the International Court of Justice in relation to Israel's legal obligations to allow and facilitate humanitarian aid in territories it currently occupies. Showen Bryce Peace reports.
Guterres referred to the region as being at a hinge point in history as questions continue to simmer around the fading hopes of a decades-long promise of a two-state solution between Israel and Palestine.
Today, the promise of a two-state solution is at risk of dwindling to the point of disappearance. The political commitment to this long-standing goal is farther than it has ever been. As a result, the rights of both Israelis and Palestinians to live in peace and security have been undermined, and the legitimate national aspirations of the Palestinians have been denied, while they endure Israel's continued presence that the International Court of Justice has found unlawful. And since the horrific 7 October terror attacks by Hamas, it has gotten worse on every front.
Guterres pointed to a situation in turmoil, an unrelenting conflict and devastation in Gaza, including utterly inhumane conditions of life imposed on its people, including the Israeli hostages still held by Hamas. Israeli military operations in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, settlement expansion, and the dramatic altering of the region's geography. Settler violence continuing against the Palestinian population, while Palestinian attacks against Israelis in both Israel and the West Bank also continue.
The world cannot afford to watch the two-state solution disappear. Political leaders face clear choices: the choice to be silent, the choice to acquiesce, and the choice to act. Mr. President, in Gaza there is no end in sight to the killing and misery. The ceasefire had brought a glimmer of hope, the long-sought release of hostages and delivery of life-saving humanitarian relief. But those embers of opportunity were cruelly extinguished with the shattering of the ceasefire on 18 March. Since then, almost 2,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza by Israeli strikes and military operations, including women, children, journalists, and humanitarians. Hamas also continues to fire rockets towards Israel indiscriminately, while the hostages continue to be held in appalling conditions. The humanitarian situation throughout the Gaza Strip has gone from bad to worse to beyond imagination.
The International Court of Justice delivered an advisory opinion in July last year, determining that Israel's continued occupation of Palestinian territories was illegal, which Israel has since rejected as a decision of lies. The UN chief called for the trampling of international law to end and referred to current proceedings at the ICJ in The Hague, with an oral statement by the UN's legal counsel to the World Court earlier this week echoed in the council.
The statement to the court includes points that I have made on a number of occasions. Specifically, that all parties to conflict must comply with all their obligations under international law, including international human rights law and international humanitarian law. That Israel, as an occupying power, is under the obligation to ensure food and medical supplies of the population. That Israel has an obligation to agree to and facilitate relief schemes in the occupied Palestinian territory. That humanitarian, medical, and United Nations personnel must be respected and protected. And I emphasize the obligation under international law to respect the privileges and immunities of the United Nations and its personnel, including the absolute inviolability of United Nations premises, property, and assets, and the immunity from legal process of the United Nations. Such immunities applies to all UN entities in the occupied Palestinian territory, including UNRWA, a subsidiary organ of the General Assembly.
Guterres argues that the two-state solution is near point of no return and that the international community has a responsibility to prevent the perpetual occupation and violence, calls that have failed to produce any shift in the current trajectory. He urged member states to take irreversible action towards implementing the two-state solution, not to let extremists on any side undermine what remains of the peace process, and to go beyond affirmations and to think creatively about the concrete steps needed to support a viable two-state solution before it was too late. I'm Sherwin Bryce-Pease in New York.
US President Donald Trump's return to the White House for a second term has been anything but quiet. In just 100 days, his administration is already facing over 220 lawsuits, and that's ranging from immigration clampdowns and controversial military policies to the firing of top officials without due process. Now, his aggressive tariff regime, particularly targeting China, has triggered global economic jitters under what the White House calls a strategy of calculated uncertainty. Well, to unpack the implications of these early decisions and what they tell us about the road ahead, we're now joined by Professor John Stremler, who's a visiting professor of international relations at Wits University in Johannesburg, South Africa, and he's a seasoned observer of US foreign policy. Prof, always good to talk to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us.
Well, Peter, it's always nice to speak with you, and Your flattering introduction defies Donald Trump. I mean, I've never seen anyone, and I go back to the Harry Truman visited my hometown in 1948, and I've never seen any president like him.
And he really is. I just wonder, we knew that it wasn't going to be pretty going in. Has it been worse than we thought?
Yes, it has been. The flooding the zone of initial executive actions orders that he's issued, 142 of them. It's a record-setting activity, but it's premised on ignorance, cruelty, and greed, and all of the other attributes that are known well by students of Donald Trump, including his niece, Dr. Mary Trump, who's written Too Much Is Never Enough about his early childhood and upbringing and what he became subsequently. And so I'm really lost for words to describe him, except that one of the the executive orders that he issued on February 7th was against South Africa, and he doesn't pay much attention to Africa at all, but he went after South Africa with total ignorance and condemned its DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion values, which are enshrined in the 1996 Constitution, and he condemned the Land Reapportionment Act, which is very benign. I've read it and I've studied it, and it is not what he describes as a land seizure act. And climate change, and we all know that climate is changing, and the science is there. And then he used these excuses to end all assistance to South Africa by executive order, and then he welcomed the Afrikaners as refugees, which is really a reflection of his inherent racism. And it's ironic that we're all Africans by descent, and this is the oldest continent and the most complex social continent in the world, and he just ignores that. And it's also been colonized by the European descendants of Africa. So it is full of irony and contradictions, and I don't mean to go on so long, but Donald Trump is Donald Trump.
And we won't even talk about slavery at this stage. But now, he's calling his administration functioning in strategic uncertainty. I cannot believe that he has people who are advising him to do this. It sounds like someone who's running the Trump organization from Trump Towers, and that everybody around him knows to tell him what he wants to hear and not what he needs to hear.
Oh yes, that's very insightful, Peter, and in fact, he takes no counsel other than the PayPal mafia, so-called, of Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and David Sachs and I guess others, but they are want to bring back apartheid to South Africa, and that's congenial with his inherent racism. But you have to understand that the American system and society is infected by the sediments of slavery, and I don't want to go back to that history, but it's true that the settler are in danger, the so-called settlers, and they're a more diverse group, but their core is Make America Great Again, and which has never been specified, and that the frustrations with Biden made people in the center vote for Donald Trump, and I observed the election and for the Carter Center, and so I think it was a clean election, a fair election, and yet he is now hell-bent on consolidating a minority rule.
So his approval rating has reached record low levels. What does that tell us? Is there some buyer's remorse from some of the people that voted for him?
Well, that's the hope, Peter, and that's I've read all those polls, the CNN and the Washington Post and the New York Times, and the established media that is credible and fair, in which he wants to tear down and replace with his version of the truth. But there is a discontent. It's growing, and it's evident in the 34 of the adults. I'm looking at the Washington Post right now. Approve of his performance, 64% disapprove, and the PBS, the public broadcaster, for heaven's sakes, which is government funded, in which you like to close down, they gave him an overwhelming F for a grade, and so it's really interesting to watch. But I don't see the counteraction yet, but it may be coming, and it may be evident in the next year's congressional elections.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that actually. His weakened approval ratings, could they have implications for the midterms, or is it too soon to say? Because he's only going to be president for 4 years, and the Republicans themselves are going to have to think about how they play this chess game going forward. Do they stick with this, or do they start to remove themselves gently because his approval rating is going to be problematic for them?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, and in politics, I've given up predicting the outcome of elections because I've been so wrong so many times. But nevertheless, it is, and in a sense, the failure of reporting from local communities, the economics of newspapers are dire. Social media has taken over, and so I don't know whether or not the Republicans who are worried about challenges from the right and their jobs will in fact stand up and be counted. Liz Cheney's example was not a good one, but that was early innings, and it rightly suggests that the situation is changing. It's very fluid, and I don't know how active the demonstrations reflect the core views of Americans who are frustrated and fear rising inflation will be, because the tariffs have been condemned by all economists of repute. Peter Navarro is an outlier, and he's close to Trump and supporting tariffs. But the economics, the pocketbook issues, do seem to be resonating with the rank and file, and so maybe they'll come out and vote for Democrats as an alternative. But predictions are very hard to render at this stage in a dynamic.
Yeah, Prof, we'll have to wait and see. No doubt it's going to fill many column inches of newspapers and social media. Prof, it's always good talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for your insights.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you. That's Professor John Stremlau, who's a visiting professor of international relations at Wits University, South Africa, talking about Donald Trump's first 100 days. And some people might call it's been a disaster.
Final hour of Africa Rise and Shine. It's just almost 8 o'clock Central African time, and if you've just joined us, thank you for doing just that. We are Channel Africa, coming to you or bringing you everything from the African perspective. We are on DSTV channel 802, on OpenView channel 628, and on www.channelafrica.co.za. Live streaming as well on our live Instagram and on YouTube.
Yes, indeed. And coming up in the next 30 minutes in particular, Asanda is going to be having a very interesting conversation. It's a day that we try and dedicate to talking to Africans who are doing amazing things across the continent. And today we speak to Congolese human rights activist, co-founder of the President of Women's Solidarity for Inclusive Peace and Development. That's all coming up shortly, right after the news, with Jwelani Tulo-Mwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe has confirmed that he's facilitating the movement of SADC troops and equipment from Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo through his country into Tanzania for repatriation. SADC terminated the deployment of its troops to the DRC last month. Operations were halted due to a major advance of Rwandan-backed M23 rebels in Eastern DRC. Sharon Bryce-Peace has the story.
Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe confirmed to SABC News that they were providing safe passage to Sami DRC and the equipment from their troop-contributing countries, which include South Africa, Malawi and Tanzania. SADC decided to terminate its deployment in eastern Congo following the deaths of 17 soldiers, bringing their December 2023 deployment to help restore peace in eastern Congo in support of the DRC government to a rapid end. Sami DRC troops were confined to their bases for months following the Rwandan-backed M23 advance in the region. Reports suggest the Sami DRC convoy will travel to Chato in northwestern Tanzania before repatriation to various countries.
Meanwhile, the government of Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of Congo have agreed to come up with a draft peace deal by May the 2nd to end the conflict that has wrecked the east of the DRC for more than 3 years. The ministers of foreign affairs of both countries signed the declaration in the United States. Chris Ochamringa has more from Kinshasa.
The DRC and Rwanda have committed to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. They also agreed to stop providing military support to non-state armed groups. The two countries also committed to facilitate the repatriation of Congolese refugees who fled to neighboring countries. They are expected to come up with a draft of the implementation of the peace agreement by May 2nd. Qatar and the US are mediating talks between the DRC and Rwanda to end the war and facilitate trade deals in the lucrative mining sector for their private firms.
Leading human rights organizations have renewed calls for investigations into the killing of protesters by Kenya's security forces during demonstrations against a rise in tax last June. This follows a BBC Africa Eye investigation exposing members of the security forces who shot dead 3 protesters at Kenya's parliament, igniting public outrage and demands for justice. Amnesty International and the Kenya Human Rights Commission said the officers identified in the documentary should face the law. The wider clampdown by the security forces on a series of protests against the finance bill left at least 65 people dead. The widower of popular Nigerian gospel singer Osinachi Nwachukwu has been sentenced to death by hanging in connection with her death 3 years ago. The 42-year-old singer was initially said to have died of throat cancer before her family went public with allegations of domestic violence. They accused her husband, Peter Nwachukwu, of abusing the singer, which ultimately led to her death. A judge convicted him on 23 charges, including culpable homicide, and gave him the maximum sentence. It is unclear if Nwachukwu, who denied the charges, will be executed, as the authorities rarely implement the death sentence. And finally, US President Donald Trump has the lowest 100-day job approval rating of any president in the past 80 years. He has boasted of achievements and says the period has been the most successful in US history. Trump addressed a rally in Michigan. The BBC's David Willies has the details.
Addressing an enthusiastic crowd in Michigan, home to much of America's automotive industry, President Trump said car companies were now lining up, as he put it, to open new manufacturing plants in the state. The auto industry is crucial to this country's manufacturing base, a sector of the economy that Mr. Trump has vowed to rejuvenate, although earlier in the day he was forced to row back on another key element of his economic plan, tariffs on the import of foreign cars and car parts.
For any news stories you would like to share with us, please do send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I'm Jolani Tulo-Mwebe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
In our sports headline this hour, host Egypt will look to record a second win against the Total Energies CAF Under-20 AFCON side today. Mira Andreeva's stunning WTA 1000 milestone has been confirmed ahead of Coco Gauff Showdown in Madrid. I'll be back with these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Zochitika ndimoda piri. Kamlondola wazochitika pena paliponse.
Aphungu nyumba ya malamulo mudziko la Malawi akuchita zokambirana zawo pa zinthu zosiyana-siyana pambuyo pa nyumbayi kutsegulidwa masiku apitawo, ndipo kondani Nyamasa ukali nafe pompano chiyambireni aphungu wakukambirana masiku apitawo ndi zovuta ziti zomwe zachitika mnyumba imeneyi ya malamulo.
Ndingathe kunena kuti State of National Address imene a President Dr. Lazarus Chakwera akhala kuipereka mnyumba ya malamulo imeneyi idautsa mpungwepungwe kwambiri nyumbayi, chifukwa pofika panopa mene ndikuyankhula pano ndiye kuti munafuna kubuka ndewu mnyumbayi. Leader of the house olemekezeka Richard Kimwendo Banda kuyimirira kuyankha koma mopsa mtima zimene amayankhula phungu oyimira ku Blantyre City South East Osama Suleiman kunena kuti sona imene adapereka president pa 14 February ikuonetsa kuti palibe chilichonse cha zero chimene chidaperekedwa mu sona imeneyi, akuti imene ayichotse.
Zochitika ndimoda piri. Lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa. Ahoy, matey!
Captain here to help, right, boys?
Set sail with us on a digital voyage like no other. Channel Africa has a treasure trove of awesomeness. That is our website and social media pages.
Tell me, why are you here?
We want you to be part of our adventure.
The winds are changing, Captain. And this time...
Imagine a world where curiosity knows no bounds, where entertainment meets enlightenment, and where every click leads to the African perspective. Visit us on our website, www.channelafrica.co.za, or follow us on Instagram or on X at Channel Africa 1. Go on, like us on Facebook at Channel Africa 1. So, spread the word. Tell a friend that Channel Africa's online variety is what they need on the web. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
US President Donald Trump has marked his first 100 days in office. Now, he's facing growing opposition to his sweeping American First agenda, an approval rating in decline. And according to an ABC News Washington Post Ipsos poll over the weekend, Trump has achieved the lowest 100-day approval rating for a US president in the past 8 decades, with just 39% of respondents approving of his handling of the job. He's governed through executive orders, often circumventing the legislature, testing the legal parameters of his policy choices, and inflicting a global trade war that has added stress to the global economy while seeking to mediate conflicts where progress has been slow. Sherwin Bryce-Beese picks up the story from New York.
During every single day of the Trump administration, I will very simply put America first.
President Donald Trump's intent made with simplistic clarity at his January inauguration, and evidenced by the near-frenetic pace in which his administration has moved. He signed 139 executive orders, moved to slash the federal workforce, dismantling agencies like USAID that for decades played an outsized role in the global humanitarian space, while instituting a trade war that has left global markets on edge and attacked allies and foes alike, including South Africa. Emma Ashford is a senior fellow at the nonpartisan think tank, the Stimson Center.
I don't think Donald Trump's worldview has changed at all since 2016. I actually think it's quite consistent with some of the things he was saying back in the 80s. He still is very hard-nosed on trade. Obviously, we've seen with the tariffs. He is, again, generally opposed to allies who don't pay their own way, who are free riders, and he tries to strike deals with other countries, right? He uses U.S. power to beat them over the head, whether that's military power, sanctions, the threat of tariffs, whatever it is, until they turn around and give him what he wants.
And while his worldview might not have shifted in the second term, his approach has, as Professor Matthew Dalek of George Washington University explains.
Politically, I think Trump was more cautious in some ways. I mean, he would back off a little bit more frequently in the first term when he came under political pressure. We saw a little bit of that when he put a 90-day pause on these recent tariffs. But, I think that they're more emboldened, more extreme, more determined to enact the agenda that they had long wanted to enact.
A new poll from ABC News, The Washington Post, and Ipsos finds that just 39% of respondents approve of Trump's handling of his job, down 6 percentage points since February, while 55% disapprove. According to the pollster, the previous low for a president at the 100-day mark, dating back to 1945, was Trump at the 100-day mark in 2017, when he achieved a 42% approval rating. Associate Dean at New York University's Center for Global Affairs, Carolyn Kisan.
In these 100 days, a lot of what would have been considered unthinkable is transpiring. And I think that I see a number of threats against the democracy that I think many people have believed to be secure, foundational, solid, that those cracks, and some of those existed, before Trump came into office, but he's been able to sort of go into those cracks and widen those cracks in a way that I think is a larger threat to the democracy that the United States has known and that the world has depended on.
Protests against the administration and his key advisor Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency have swept across the country, while the Republican-controlled Congress has avoided any confrontations with the executive despite their oversight role. That has left the federal courts to step in as a check on Trump's power.
I think there's a general feeling, though, that the opposition has to do more, that marches are not enough, and that marches will, sure, they get attention the day of, but what kind of actual change do they bring about? And so if you think about sort of movements for change, it has to be very consistent and has to be really focused. I don't know if we have seen clearly yet what that opposition is or will be.
True to his word, he has cracked down on illegal immigration, with illegal crossings at the US-Mexico border falling to its lowest levels in March, as Danielle Pletka of the American Enterprise Institute explains.
To watch how he has managed to close down illegal border crossings over his first not even 100 days. Indeed, this happened in the first month, that you saw that from tens of thousands of people crossing every day, you were down to the single or double digits of people trying to cross the border illegally. That told us something very important. It told us that with will, it could be done.
President Trump has also withdrawn the United States from the Paris Climate Change Agreement, the World Health Organization, and the UN Human Rights Council, preferring a unilateral approach to the consensus-driven ideals of multilateralism. His second term started with some momentum on ending the war in Gaza, only later to see the ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas collapse. His unilateralism is also evident in how his administration is playing a mediation role in the Russia-Ukraine war, where frustration at the slow pace towards a ceasefire is beginning to emerge, and how it has implemented its trade policy with nations around the world. 100 days and counting, with 1,361 more days to come in his second term. I'm Sherwin Bryce Pease in New York.
It's 8:15 Central African Time, and it's a Wednesday, so this is the day that we dedicate to shining the spotlight on Africans who are doing amazing things. And this morning we speak to Congolese human rights activist, co-founder and president of Women's Solidarity for Inclusive Peace and Development, or SOFEPADI, co-founder of the Fund for Congolese Women, or the FFC, and served on the board of the UN Voluntary Fund for Victims of Torture, a resilient woman advocating for the rights of people in the Democratic Republic of Congo. She is Julienne Lusenge, and she joins us on the line now. Julienne, thank you so much for making time for us. How are you this morning?
Thank you too to invite me.
It's our pleasure. It's really our pleasure. Let's get straight into it. I mean, where does your courage and activism stem from? You were raised in Haut-Uele province in the DRC. As you've mentioned, people who valued open communication were the people you were around growing up.
Okay. In my family, my father gave me a chance to speak to him and to discuss with him, because it's not easy for Africa father, or in Congolese culture, it's not easy. But my father gave us all in the family the possibility to discuss with him and to tell him when we are not happy with something, or if something is wrong in the family, we tell him and he accepts. But when I went to school, and when I go to, I beginning to work, I was journalist, and I see women in the village, they cannot speak. They need to speak, but they cannot, because the culture is not allow them to do that. And they told me what they need. They need to be to have power. They need to to speak. They need to have more rights in the village, but the traditional chief don't give them this possibility to come and sit with men.
Yeah.
And I think myself that why I cannot bring the voice of women and speak for them and to give them capacity to try to challenge this culture and speak to traditional chief to accept to change. And what is why we create Sofe Party. And in the same time, we see in Ituri province, where we was living, war is we create the association at 2000 in April.
Mm-hmm.
And in this time, war is going on in Ituri provinces. And we see women on the road without food, with children, no assistance. And I call other women to come and to help them. And I call people to stop war. We organize many meetings to inform women what is happen, how they can do to stop this.
We'll talk about Sofe Party in a bit and even the FFC, but I want to go back to when you were in journalism. What type of journalism were you involved in? I know you were on radio. Yes.
Yes.
And what were your stories of interest? So basically women empowerment.
Yeah, in the radio, we had a program called Women and Children Education. We inform women how they can take care of children, of themselves, and how they can have a good food from our cultural food in the village. How they can know their right. We go in the village and visit them. We sit with them. We listen them, and they told us what they need. And when we come back to the radio, we invite some experts. If we have a question about health, we invite doctors to come and to give response. If we have a question about justice, we invite lawyers to come and to speak, or judge to come and to explain to people. And we give them also information how they can have water for them, how they can have they can build a medical center in the village. And when they take action to build center or to have water in the village, they invite us to go and visit. And when we visit, we take interview and we bring to the radio. We pass this interview in the radio, and other people listen, and they also take action to do.
There goes the power of media right there. What would you say your experience as a journalist added in terms of your view and vision for life? Because then that's where Sofe Party was also born.
Yes. It's the time of Sofe Party was born. And we continue to have some podcast in the radio, but we do that as women association, because in this time, government Congolese in this time it's Zairian government. They didn't pay us the salary, and we stay we work many months without salary. And we say ourselves, we are mothers, we have family, we need to take care of them. So I went to ask to my sister to give me a small land, and I'm beginning to do agriculture. To give food of my for my family.
What would you say?
And I do many work, and I do also a movie. I was teacher. In the same time, I went to my field. After that, I go to the radio. I go to take some image. I don't know how I can say that, to do movie, and I go to the school to give some lesson, and it's give me resilience. It's give me powerful, and I speak. My father saw me how I can speak and be powerful when I speak. He give me many books to read and to try to resume and present.
So in spite of all the challenges you faced in your endeavors, especially with Sofepadi, you saw other avenues in terms of how you're going to gather support, especially financially. So we've touched on the type of work and support that you provide to women as the Women's Solidarity for Inclusive Peace and Development, and some of the initial resistance you got and the challenges where you didn't have pay and you didn't have money to get to the areas that you needed to reach these women. But also part of Sofepadi is the provision of mobile clinics, and you've got a hospital. What have been some of your proudest moments there in terms of how far you've come?
Oh, we come very far. And today, when I see Sofepadi, and I say, God is good. Because it's easy to create association as women, and to bring this association to be to grow. Because many times we work without resources. We do sometimes I take on my family fees to pay some activities or to help to assist some survivor. The hospital till now didn't we didn't have someone who supports hospital. Every day we have we don't know how to survive. With all
Is that
these
where
challenges.
is that where the fund for Congolese women, or FFC, then comes in? And tell us about the focus areas of this fund.
I created Congolese Women Funds. It's not to support only Sofepadi. We saw that other organization, women organization too, they don't access to fund, because the international NGO, when they come here, they see how Congolese women work. We are the one who know the causes, and we are the one who work to change our situation. But when they come, they ask us how things gone, how we can do. We give them all information. But the one who go to the funders and donors and say, oh, the women organization, they cannot do the report, they don't know how to do, and I think myself and say, we need to have our basket to mobilize money and to give to the women association. That is why I called other women and we create Congolese Women's Fund.
What would you say are the biggest misperceptions about the DRC coming from the international community? In your previous interviews, you spoke of being labeled the rape capital of the world, and maybe also linking that into the fact that you're also on the board of UN Voluntary Fund for Victims of Torture. How important it is also that your activism spreads through the international spaces in representation of Africa and your home country, DRC. Let's start with the biggest misperceptions from the international community.
Yeah, we go everywhere. Myself, I travel everywhere to speak about this because it's not correct. Yes, we know that rape is very, very a big problem in our country. But they cannot just say, oh, DRC is the capital of rape. They are here. They don't help to protect women. Why they can say that? 30 years of war. It destroys our culture, our behaviors. Now, impunity is very grow in our country. Everything is destroyed. The militia, we have many militia.
Have you ever felt, Julian, that have you ever felt that your safety or that of your family was at risk because of the work that you do?
Yes, when you work for justice and peace, you cannot be welcome for anyone.
Yeah.
They attack me because I denounce what they do.
Well, either way, we hope that you do keep being motivated in terms of what you do. I know you've got a lot of recognition. The publication Time.com named you one of the 100 most influential people of 2024. And also in 2023, the UN recognized you with the UN Prize in the field of human rights. So we hope you keep going. We really need the work that you do, and we appreciate your time again here on Channel Africa.
Yes, thank you. Now we initiate movement. We call it Women's Energy, to be able to participate on the peace process. But it's not easy.
Awesome.
And we try to call solidarity for all women, African women to come with us to ask for peace.
And the struggle continues. We're going to have to we are out of time completely. We're going to have to leave it there. But we need to follow you on social media and wherever we can find you in terms of your previous interviews. Such an inspiring story there. Julienne Lusenge, co-founder of the Fund for Congolese Women, also the president and co-founder of Sofepadi, amongst many, many titles that she wears. At 8:31 Central African Time, let's say good morning for our news headlines to Jwalane Tulo Mwepe.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Good morning. Making headlines, security experts say a surge in attacks in Nigeria's northeast by Boko Haram and its splinter rival ISWAP has raised fears of a major comeback by jihadists. Rwanda's Foreign Minister Olivier Nduhungirehe has confirmed that he's facilitating the movement of SADC troops and equipment from Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo through his country and into Tanzania for repatriation. SADC terminated the deployment of its troops to the DRC last month. And finally, US President Donald Trump has agreed to hold talks with Mark Carney, who was re-elected as Canada's Prime Minister in a poll that the US President dominated. I will have details on these and other stories at 9 o'clock.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Right, let's go to the world of sport, and it's brought to us by Figile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. And we begin with the hockey news. Namibia's junior women's and men's hockey teams have successfully qualified for the upcoming Junior World Cup set to take place in Chile and India, respectively. Their qualification follows a strong showing at the Junior Africa Cup held in Windhoek, where they competed against top continental teams. In the women's competition, South Africa proved dominant, winning all 5 of their matches to top the standings with 15 points. Namibia finished in second place after securing 4 victories, giving them a total of 12 points. Zimbabwe claimed third place after a decisive win over Uganda, with all 3 teams earning a spot at the Junior Women's World Cup in Chile. The men's tournament followed a similar pattern, with South Africa finishing first after winning all 5 of their matches to collect 15 points. Namibia came in second with 4 wins and 12 points, while Egypt secured the bronze medal position. These 3 teams will now head to the Junior Men's World Cup in India. On to football news. Paris Saint-Germain, PSG, seized the advantage in their Champions League semi-final against Arsenal as Ousmane Dembele has sealed a 1-0 win in the first leg. Dembele struck in the opening minutes at the Emirates Stadium, and Luis Enrique's side held on to the lead with a composed display that kept Arsenal at bay. PSG will head into the second leg at the Parc des Princes on the 7th of May as favourites to reach the final against Barcelona or Inter Milan as they look to win the tournament for the first time. But the French champions should take nothing for granted given their history of epic European collapses. Arsenal's first defeat in 18 home European matches was a painful blow to their own bid to win a first Champions League crown. Now on to cricket news. Proteas women fell to a 15-run defeat in the ODI Tri-Series opener against India in Colombo despite a valiant century from Tasmin Breds. Set a target of 277, Breds and captain Laura Volvart gave the Proteas the perfect start when the duo put on 140 for the first wicket. But Breds says the conditions were difficult to play under.
Yeah, so I think in general the heat over here on the subcontinents and the humidity is something that no South African is actually used to. So it was a bit tough for me, especially with us fielding first in 50 overs. And then batting of course so long. So yeah, I got a few cramps and I struggled a bit, but yeah, the heat definitely won today.
The Proteas women will take on host nation Sri Lanka in their next encounter at the same venue on Friday. Brett says she didn't think she would have to come back after the cramps.
Yeah, I mean, I was hoping I didn't have to come back on due to the cramps, but I mean, I'm always eager to try and contribute and help the team where I can. Yeah, it's not always a nice feeling. Sometimes I wonder if I maybe batted a bit longer or pushed myself a bit more, maybe we wouldn't have been in that situation, but I guess at the end of the day that is cricket. And yeah, of course I would have loved to get the team over the line.
For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. This is Channel Africa Sport with me, Fikile Lingwati.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
My name is Neto, N-E-T-O Chamani. Osiyatiko, Nengezimo, Mkhandlu, Phandle kunjani moyani. Voko Tendele. Africa at Play, Asteleli Siyashaya. Africa's velvet voice is in the house. Africa at Play is a place to be, where we speak all things sport and music, from the African continent to the rest of the world. We speak to your bundles of joy in sport, 12-year-olds and below, teenagers in sport. And we speak to elite athletes, administrators, coaches, and all the behind-the-scenes stakeholders of sport and music. Africa at Play, Asteleli Siyashaya. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Let's get the latest from the world of economics. Here's Tabiso Lehuko with our business news.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Asanda, and good morning. South Africa's Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, will this afternoon brief the media on the technical process to be undertaken regarding the 2025 budget. His Deputy Ministers, David Masondo and Asher Sarapin, as well as Director General Duncan Pieterse, will attend the briefing in Pretoria. This follows the Democratic Alliance and Economic Freedom Fighters court challenge against the proposed value-added tax hike in the budget. The court ratified an agreement reached on a few days ago, allowing Godongwana to rescind the increase, which was initially set to take effect tomorrow. South Africa's Small Business Development Minister, Stella Ndabeni, maintains that the ocean's economy is there to benefit South Africans at large. Ndabeni, who has referred to the ocean's economy as South Africa's next gold mine, says it was important that everyone, including residents of townships, benefit. She stressed the importance of sustainable fishing, tourism, shipping, aquaculture, as well as oil and gas exploration and the preservation of the health of the marine ecosystem.
We have been given fishing rights and we're trying to assist them because most of them, they will complain that they don't have infrastructure. They are forced to go and fish, but they don't have access to market. As a result, they're being exploited. Now we're coming in to step in to say this is the opportunity that must not only be exploited by those who can afford. How do we step in as the department? By ensuring that we provide them with the infrastructure.
South Africa's Deputy President Paul Mashatile says that the country's G20 presidency is a crucial chance for Africa to advance its economic and developmental priorities on the global stage. Speaking in Pretoria at the opening of a two-day T20 high-level dialogue yesterday, Mashatile highlighted the importance of strengthening Africa's voice within the G20, a group that represents 85% of global GDP and 75% of international trade. Mashatile explains.
The South African G20 presidency provides us with an opportunity to take meaningful steps towards addressing economic and developmental issues in Africa. Since 1999, South Africa has been a member of the G20, which accounts for 85% of global GDP and 75% of international trade. This group is crucial for global economic cooperation.
Belgian Foreign Minister Maxime Prévost says Belgium is open to deep involvement in the Democratic Republic of Congo's mineral sector. The Foreign Minister is on a visit to the former Belgian colony, which is seeking to diversify its investment partners. The vast Central African nation is home to large reserves of copper, cobalt, lithium, and uranium, among other minerals. But chronic instability has long been an obstacle to the foreign investment needed to fully develop them. Kinshasa is currently on a push to attract new players to the sector, and talks are already underway with Washington after a Congolese senator pitching a minerals for security deal contacted U.S. officials. China and Hong Kong stocks were flat as many traders were reluctant to take fresh positions ahead of the long Labor Day, while data showed new export orders plummeted due to aggressive U.S. tariffs. Both China's blue chip CSI 300 index and the Shanghai Composite were little changed by the lunch break. Hong Kong's Hang Seng, the index, rose 0.2% but is poised to drop 5% in April, the biggest monthly drop in 16 months. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 601, Botswana 13 pula 537, Kenya 128 shilling 42, and Zambia 27 kwacha 87. The BRICS countries, Brazil, the dollar there will cost you 5 real 64, Russia 82 rubles 9, India 85 rupees 16, China 7 yuan 27, and in South Africa $1 is trading at 18 rand 53. $1 is trading at 74 pence to the British pound and 87 to the euro. Looking at commodities markets, gold is trading at $3,311, platinum $972 per ounce, Brent crude oil is at $64.25 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business in Johannesburg, I'm Tabisolo Huku.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
Right, now let's take a look at this story. A new major study has revealed a staggering statistic. Over 3 million children worldwide have died in 2022 due to infections linked to antimicrobial resistance, or AMR, which occurs when bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites evolve, rendering medicines like antibiotics ineffective. Now, the findings published by experts in global child health are stark warning about the growing threats of AMR and what it poses, particularly to children and low and middle income countries. Well, to unpack the scale of the problem and what must be done, we're now joined live from Australia by Professor Joseph Harwell, who's a Senior Clinical Director at the Clinton Health Access Initiative and co-author of the study. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, and welcome to the program, Prof.
No, thanks for having me.
So, describe for us a little bit more about the scale of this crisis. Over 3 million child deaths in 1 year due to AMR-linked infections. I mean, this is staggering. How did we get here?
Well, what we did was estimate what we think the rate of AMR-associated mortality was in children. And there is some uncertainty as to what the actual number is, but we feel pretty confident that the number is high, and 3 million is going to be close to what the actual number is. AMR has been a problem for children for a long time, but we just don't have really good data on the magnitude of it, and that's why we wanted to focus our research efforts particularly on children here, because children are much more vulnerable to adverse consequences of antimicrobial resistant infections, and if we don't know what's going on, then we can't respond.
All right, so what we know is that this study highlights the low and middle income countries hardest hit. Why are children in these regions particularly vulnerable to AMR?
That's an excellent question, and again, some of it gets back to the adequacy of the data. In places where you have really good surveillance, it's easy to see when you have a problem and you can intervene. The surveillance, particularly in South Africa, in Southern Africa, is not very good. And what we did was you took advantage of some commonly available, publicly available data sets to look at what we think the rates of resistance are in the countries where we have reasonably good surveillance, and the rates of resistance in Africa were very high. We also saw very high rates of resistance in Southeast Asia as well. And so we used the mortality data and the resistance data and the antibiotic use data, along with mortality and demographic data that's available all from a variety of different websites and databases. And we compiled some evidence to try to understand the magnitude of the problem and where it was.
All right, so what are some of the preventable factors contributing to AMR-related deaths in children? Poor sanitation, misuse of antibiotics, underdiagnosis?
Well, antimicrobial resistance is a multifaceted problem, but resistance really develops from antibiotic use. It can develop even when antibiotic use is appropriate, but in perhaps 50% of the time, 50% of the cases, antibiotics are not used appropriately. So this is I think, where we can have the most control. Humans are exposed to antibiotics that are also present in our food and in the environment, and inappropriate use of antibiotics in those contexts, in animal food production, in poor waste management, those also expose people to antibiotics and can lead to antimicrobial resistance. So there's this concept in the AMR field called One Health that recognizes that the health of people and animals and the environment are all intertwined. And when antibiotics are present, that will expose the bacteria that are in the environment, in the animals and in the people, to antibiotics that can lead them to develop resistance.
So, what does this study tell us about the state of pediatric care and infection control globally, and specifically in Africa?
Well, there is a concern with these rising rates of resistance that our ability to treat even common infections are going to be under threat. I think that in low and middle income countries, such as in Africa, the ability to respond is impaired by the availability of evidence. And so that was one of the reasons why we undertook this work, was to improve access to the evidence. If you don't know whether your rates of resistance are high or not, you might be tempted to respond by using medicines that are broad spectrum, that could kill everything. Alternatively, if you go on and use the medicines that you've always used and there's a lot of resistance, then you could have some more negative consequences. And so we really need to have more information to help us understand how to respond, and then to see if the way we respond is effective or not, looking at that evidence over time.
Can you explain to us how antimicrobial resistance spreads? I mean, is it just a hospital issue or a broader community issue?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So hospitals are where antibiotics get used a lot. That's where sick people go and are given antibiotics. But antibiotics are also used quite a lot in communities. And so perhaps the most highly resistant bacteria live in hospitals, and hospital-acquired infections do tend to have higher rates of resistance. But over time, those bacteria that live in hospitals diffuse out into the community. And so increasingly, we're seeing types of resistance that ordinarily we only saw in hospitals appearing in the communities as well. And again, if you have data, if you can do surveillance to pick it up, then you would recognize it early. But in most cases, these things are happening without adequate information to tell us when it's happening and where. And so figuring out where it is and the magnitude of it is really important from a policy perspective.
There are some growing concerns that AMR could reverse decades of medical progress. Are we heading towards a post-antibiotic era, maybe, where routine infections could become deadly again?
Well, that is certainly the concern. I think when bacteria are resistant to every antibiotic we have, even common routine surgeries, treatment for cancers, where the complications are often infections, but we've been relying on being able to treat those infections. A lot of medical progress could be threatened. Increasingly, people are having artificial joints implanted. They are having intravenous catheters, lots of surgical procedures that would ordinarily not be such a big deal. If you develop an infection that does not respond to antibiotics, that could potentially be life-threatening. I don't think we're at a point in history that we can say it's a pre-antibiotic era anymore. We've been doing a reasonably good job of developing new antibiotics. Unfortunately, those antibiotics are expensive, and in order to be able to use them properly, again, you have to have information. So there is a concern that if we ignore this problem and don't do what we need to do to contain it, that the measures that we've taken to try to combat it will not be effective in many cases.
Okay, so with that in mind, how can African governments and health ministries respond more effectively, particularly with regards to AMR in children?
Yeah, so there are a number of ways to respond. The first is, I think, to strengthen surveillance systems so that we have adequate data to help inform our treatment guidelines and protocols. And in South Africa, at least, the surveillance systems are reasonably good. And so
Hello, Prof, can you hear me? Hello? All right, it looks like we may have lost the line there to Australia, and we've been speaking about AMR, antimicrobial resistance, which is a fascinating subject. We take it for granted that everything is going to end up well when we get to hospitals in particular, but not always the case. And that was Professor Joseph Harwell, who's the Senior Clinical Director at the Clinton Health Access Initiative, talking to us. But it's not a lost cause. We do have hope, and we have to hold on to that. So I'm wondering what's coming up on... what is it? On the Move after the
On the Move
news.
with Palesa and Benjamin.
Yeah.
So we're looking forward to getting a throw forward in terms of what they're going to be discussing. They always have interesting topics, those ones.
No, they do. So today in history,
yes, let's
I'm
go
going to
there.
take you back to World War II. Who was the most significant German figure in World War II back in the day? Germany leader Adolf
Hitler.
Yes. He died by suicide today, April the 30th, in a bunker in Berlin. And that was really the beginning of the end of the World War. He was Germany. He was the war effort. And it's remarkable how people can just get drawn into an individual. And Germany took on the world. I mean, it was the most... When we look back now, the insanity of it. But at the time, they truly, truly believed in what they were doing. And thankfully for you and I, that the forces against Nazism were defeated. But today was the day that he took his own life. And I'm always disappointed when people who reign terror take their own lives so that they don't face the justice and the cruelty, maybe even, that they fear that they've meted out onto other people.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
To revisit
but
them.
on the other way of looking at it is they're conscious. They were not able to fully function after what they knew they did. So the pain of it, also the I don't
know. I just think that as a cow,
I think it's possible. I think it's possible that one cannot live with themselves after they know what they've done. Yeah, and they really just...
I think it's humiliation. It's the humiliation of being caught and standing up before a court and being forced to answer. That is what I think he was.
Okay.
We disagree on that.
I think no, and I see your point.
Yeah,
it's just that I think there's also the other flip of the coin, or the side of the other coin as well.
I would love to hope and think that he might have been remorseful.
I really don't believe spiritually that we get away with those kinds of atrocities as a human being. Let us get another debt that you pay.
Let us get another opinion.
What are you guys talking about? Sounds very intriguing. I'm not quite sure.
So, Adolf Hitler died by suicide today, apparently. 1945, in a bunker in Berlin, apparently. we're wondering, was that because he was remorseful, or he didn't want to get caught and be humiliated?
I think he had a huge ego, so I don't think if he did kill himself, it's because of that ego that he had.
Well, he couldn't live with himself knowing what he did.
I don't even think he
Not
cared.
remorse, but
I think he just didn't want anyone else to kill him, but to do it himself. I think, like, how dare they? I'll do it myself. I think that's the kind of ego we're dealing with.
Fascinating. That's a third factor.
There's always different angles to the story.
So what's on the move? Less controversial.
Asanda, you're a farmer. Mm-hmm. What do you think about cannabis farming and all these products that are coming out from that?
It's coming up well, in the country. We're still quite a new country in terms of that market.
Yeah.
Hemp and cannabis are coming up quite well, and quite a lot of uses for it.
Yeah, there are a lot of
just
uses.
Think medicinally only, but there's a whole lot of things you can do, especially hemp.
Yeah, and I'm one of them. I use a lot of like CBD products, But we're going to be speaking about the health implications of it, because there's a huge debate that's going out around the health regulations of these cannabis products that they don't go through the same tests as other products when it comes to health verifications and certifications and all of that. It seems like they can do it as they please, right? So we're going to be looking at the health side of it. Is it really good for us completely to have it unregulated? I know that some people say, hey, you have to do these things in a regulated environment, whether you have a therapist around you to speak on it, if you're going to go high on something, or no, for real, because people do get high on these things, and they're not good for your heart, they're not good for your body overall. And also, if you consume these products as well overboard, what are the implications of that? There's sweets now.
What might regulation look
Even
like?
milkshake.
Age restrictions?
Milkshake.
What would regulation look like? Age restrictions? What kind of things? I don't
You see, there's not even an age restriction around it. When there's like age restrictions around tobacco products. So it's an interesting space that it's under-regulated.
Are you talking to a doctor or an actual farmer?
We're going to be actually speaking to, let me find out, someone from the cannabis industry.
Okay.
Because I think the industry itself is asking questions around new entrants. So this is a licensed cannabis practitioner and say, well, this space is just going overboard and people are just doing as they please.
One Navaya, more fire.
More fire.
All right, that's how we come to the end of Rise and Shine right here on Channel Africa, where we bring you the African perspective.
We'll see you tomorrow. From me, Asanda, Beda, and Peter Ndoro. It's goodbye for now.
Have an awesome day.
It's time for news. Let's say good morning one more time. Well, us, because we're leaving. To Jwalani Tulongwepe.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Asanda. Top stories. Asaba concerns over a surge in attacks in Nigeria's northeast by jihadists, and Rwanda to provide a safe passage for SADC troops. Good morning. Security experts say a surge in attacks in Nigeria's northeast by Boko Haram and its splinter rival ISWAP has raised fears of a major comeback by jihadists, whose tactics now include armed drones and explosive devices planted on major roads. At least 22 people were killed over the weekend, in weekend raids by militants in Adamawa and Borno states, while 26 others died on Monday after an explosive device ripped into